Once upon a time on an Earth that was both retro and futuristic, two of the best snipers in the world were given a secret mission. They were told to travel to a hidden place and guard two towers built on opposite sides of a deep, wide gorge. They were not allowed to talk to anyone or even to each other, and they had to stay in their towers for a whole year. One man, Levi Kane, a former U.S. Marine and now a private contractor, was assigned to the West Tower. On the other side, a skilled Lithuanian covert operative named Dresa was sent to guard the East Tower, working for the Kremlin. Both snipers carried their own burdens. Levi was haunted by nightmares of all the enemies he had killed during his service, a heavy guilt that sometimes kept him awake at night. Meanwhile, Dresa had her own sorrow. Her father, Ericus, was very ill with cancer and had even planned to end his life on Valentine's Day so he could be reunited with his late wife. When Levi arrived at his post, he met and relieved his predecessor, a tough former British Royal Marine named Jasper J.D. Drake. J.D. told Levi many strange things about the secret location. He explained that in addition to the two towers, the gorge was protected by automatic turret defenses, special cloaking antennas that hid the whole area, and mines along the walls to keep dangerous, monstrous creatures inside. These creatures had been given the nickname the Hollow Men, a name taken from an old poem by T.S. Eliot that spoke of the end of the world. J.D. also warned Levi about a dangerous protocol called Stray Dog. He said very clearly, "If you hear those air raid sirens, you run like hell." He even mentioned that in the late 1940s, 3 battalions of soldiers, about 2,400 men, had been sent into the gorge, but none of them ever returned. Soon after sharing these ominous warnings, J.D. was whisked away by helicopter. In a shock twist, the man who was supposed to be his contact killed J.D. without any explanation and then called Levi's own handler to report that the transition was complete. For several weeks after arriving, everything was quiet. Then one day, on her birthday, Dresa broke the strict no communication rule. Instead of staying silent, she began to send Levi messages using simple written signs. At first, Levi was surprised, but soon he started replying in kind. The two found that they could have little conversations from across the deep gorge. They even began a friendly competition, testing each other's skills with their sniper rifles, trying to outshoot one another. In between long hours of keeping watch, they passed the time by playing games of chess with scraps of paper and making improvised drum beats with whatever they could find. As the months passed, their silent conversations turned into something more. One day, 6 months into their lonely watch, Levi decided to risk crossing the gorge to spend time with Dresa. He attached himself to a zipline and slid across the deep chasm until he reached Dresa's tower. For a short while, they met face to face and something wonderful began to bloom between them. They spent time dancing, laughing, and even making rabbit pie, a strange but delightful treat that they prepared together. Levi, who secretly loved to write poetry, told Dresa that he was working on a poem for her called She Collapsed the Night. Their brief meeting was filled with hope and the promise of a shared future, even though they knew the rules said they must never leave their posts. But the joy was not to last. The very next morning, as Levi prepared to return to his own tower using the zipline, disaster struck. Unknown to him, there were hidden mines along the wall on his side of the gorge. When the creatures known as the Hollow Men began to climb the wall, the mines suddenly exploded. The force of the blasts was so great that Levi's zipline cable snapped and he tumbled down into the gorge. In a desperate bid to survive his fall, he deployed a parachute. Not long after, Dresa, determined not to lose him, also jumped out of her tower with a parachute to rescue Levi. When they finally landed safely together on the bottom of the gorge, they made a startling discovery. Everything in the gorge was different now. Every plant, animal, and even the tiniest insect seemed to have been mixed together in a strange, unnatural way. They soon learned that the source of these mutations was hidden nearby. After wandering for a while, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned laboratory that had once been used during World War II for bioweapons research. An earthquake had caused a contaminant leak there, and now any living thing exposed to it would begin to mutate within 5 days. Originally, this lab had been run by both Eastern and Western governments, but it had long since fallen into the hands of a shadowy private defense company called Darklake. Darklake continued to use the lab, extracting samples and data to try to create super soldiers. Deep inside the lab, Levi discovered something called the Stray Dog Protocol, a hidden failsafe designed by the original researchers to sterilize the entire site with a nuclear explosion. Darklake, however, had taken control of this dangerous protocol. Realizing that the situation was growing ever more perilous, Levi and Dresa fought their way back up from the gorge. They found an old jeep with a working towing cable and used it to climb out, battling off several of the monstrous Hollow Men along the way. Once above ground, they decided that they needed to separate for 5 days. This would allow them to check themselves for any signs of infection from the strange mutagens and also to report back to their handlers. Levi's handler, a steely woman named Bartholomew, soon contacted him. She admitted that Darklake was now running the operation and that she already knew the site had been compromised. Realizing that Darklake would soon come after them and would try to kill them to cover up the experiments, Levi and Dresa made a fateful decision. They agreed to activate the Stray Dog Protocol themselves. They hoped that by triggering this nuclear failsafe, they could destroy the mutated area and stop Darklake's dangerous research, protecting the rest of the world from these mutagens. Bartholomew arrived with her soldiers, but when she reached Levi's tower, it was empty. In a desperate move, she sent armed aerial drones to hunt down Levi and Dresa. However, the two snipers had prepared a plan. At the same time, they took careful, synchronized shots that destroyed the cloaking antennas. With the site suddenly exposed to surveillance, the Stray Dog Protocol was automatically triggered. A terrible explosion rocked the area, killing Bartholomew and all her soldiers, and the entire site was obliterated. During the chaos of the explosion, Levi and Dresa became separated. Dresa managed to complete her 5-day self-quarantine to ensure that she was not infected. Once her quarantine was over, she left for France, where they had planned to meet again. She waited for Levi, but he did not appear as promised. While going through her belongings, Dresa discovered an envelope addressed to her with the words, "If I don't make it." Inside, she found the completed poem, "She Collapsed the Night," that Levi had written for her. Her heart ached with both sorrow and hope. A month later, while Dresa was working in a small local restaurant in France, she was suddenly surprised by someone familiar. It was Levi. He had managed to survive everything, and he approached her with a shy smile, asking if he could have some of the rabbit pie they had once made together. In that sweet, simple moment, the two finally kissed, sealing their promise to reunite and face whatever the future held together. And so, in a world full of secret missions, hidden dangers, and monstrous creatures, two brave souls found each other. They risked everything, fought through terrifying obstacles, and even activated a nuclear failsafe to save the world. Their journey was long and filled with hardship, but in the end, love and determination brought them back together, proving that even in the darkest times, hope and connection can light the way.